What am I even doing with my life? Let's talk about the question we're all quietly afraid to ask out loud. The one that sneaks in late at night or hits you on a random Tuesday while you're driving, or shows up when you're scrolling and suddenly feeling behind, disconnected, or off track. What am I even doing with my life? Nothing in like a dramatic, everything is falling apart kinds of way, but in that quiet, unsettling way where you realize you've been busy, productive, responsible, and still somehow unsure. Today, we're not running from that question. We're finally facing it. Welcome back to the Daily Champ. I'm your host, Rachael Baxter, and this is a place where we talk honestly, about real life, real transitions, and the inner work required to build a life that actually feels aligned. So if you're a woman in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, and you've ever thought, I should be further along, I thought I'd have more clarity by now. Why does my life look fine on paper but feel confusing inside? Well, this episode is for you. So let me ask you gently, but honestly, when was the last time you allowed yourself to sit with the question, what am I even doing with my life? But not to judge yourself, not to panic, but to just listen. And here's the truth. Most of us are terrified of that question, right? Because we think if we ask it, everything will unravel. We're afraid it means we failed. We're afraid it means we chose wrong. We're afraid it means we wasted time. So instead, we stay busy, we stay distracted, we stay productive, we stay scrolling, right? But clarity isn't going to come from avoiding the question. It's going to come from being brave enough to ask it. So the fear isn't confusion. It's what confusion might reveal. So let's jump into point one. And this is where I'm going to start. The fear isn't that you don't know what you're doing. The fear is what you might realize if you slow down enough to notice, because asking, what am I doing with my life, can reveal things we can feel things we're just not ready to confront. So for example, number one, that you've outgrown a career, or or a relationship just no longer fits for you, or that you've been living by someone else's expectations, that you've been surviving instead of choosing. So we tell ourselves, I'll just figure it out later. But unfortunately, later keeps moving. So avoiding the question doesn't protect you. It's delaying you. So point number two, I'll have my own moment of quiet reckoning, just a little personal story. I've had this moment more than once in my life, right? I feel like with every decade, we're like, oh, what am I doing, right? It's fine. We're all asking the same question. So from the outside, things looked really good. I was working and creating, producing, building, and yet internally something felt off. I remember thinking, why am I restless? If everything is technically fine, that's, when I realized something important, that discomfort isn't always a sign that you're failing. Sometimes it's a sign you're evolving. That question, what am I even doing with my life? It wasn't an attack. It was an invitation. Let's jump into point three. The pressure to have it all figured out by a certain age. There is so much unspoken pressure on women, especially, to have life figured out by a certain age. And yes, biologically, that is completely true, right? By 25, you should know your direction. By 30, your career should be stable. By 40, you should be settled and confident. And by that age too, you're, I should have a family by now. But, for a lot of people, life just doesn't work like a checklist. And, especially in like becoming a mom at a certain age, sometimes you really just didn't meet the right guy to have that part of your story. And that's okay. So, but here's what really no one tells us. It doesn't arrive all at once. And it likely just arrives in seasons. So if you're questioning right now, it doesn't mean you're behind. It just means you're paying attention. Point number 4, why staying busy is often avoidance. Let's be honest about something really uncomfortable. We stay busy so we don't have to listen, right? We fill our days with the task, the noise, the content, obligations, because stillness invites those questions, and questions demand answers. But busyness without direction leads to burnout, and productivity without purpose leads to resentments. I'm going to say that one again. Productivity without purpose leads to resentment. So if you've been exhausted lately, it might not be because you're doing too much. It just might be because you're doing things that no longer align. So let's get into point 5. Reframing the question from panic to power. I want to reframe the question for you and with you. So instead of asking, what am I even doing with my life? Try asking, what feels aligned right now? What part of me is asking for attention? What version am I growing into? That's a really nice one, actually. What version am I growing into? And I think that is such a calming and settling question to ask yourself. Another question is, what do I do next? What do I want the next season? Not like the next decade to feel like. So you don't need a full life plan. You need your next honest step, because clarity is going to come from movement, not perfection. And guys, this is such a theme with a lot of my episodes. It's about movement. It's not about perfection. And I could get into that. For all of you who are thinking about 2026 and we're finishing out this year, and you might have said, man, I had some really good fitness goals, or I had some really good business goals, but I just didn't get started because it didn't look like this. And, that's just our struggle with, going after perfection. But all we really needed to do was take one step in front of the other. So the way to transition out of that is to give yourself permission to be in the middle. If you're in the middle between who you were and who you're becoming, that's not failure. That is transformation. So you don't need to label the season. You need to honor it. So if that question has been hovering lately, what am I even doing with my life? Let me say this very clearly. You are not broken. You are not late. You are not lost. You're just waking up. And awakening doesn't come with instant answers. It comes with courage, with honesty, with the willingness to listen instead of numb. Because champions don't avoid the hard questions, right? They sit with them long enough to hear what's true. So tonight or tomorrow, or the next quiet moment you get, ask the question without fear, not to judge yourself, but to guide yourself, because the woman you're becoming is trying to get your attention, and she deserves to be heard. So thanks for listening to The Daily Champ. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might be quietly asking the same question. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, which is in 2 weeks, because we're going to celebrate the holidays next week, and I'm going to spend time with my family, and it's going to be so good. So I will see you right before the new year. So I hope you're enjoying this episode. Thanks for watching.